I-V-M.
My guest today is a man of many colors. He's a business guru, a meditation master, and somebody who doles out advice every day on his social media. I know him for almost 20 years. We've been on TV shows, panels, and a whole host of things together. We've also been in the same business. However, we don't call ourselves competitors. My guest today is somebody more popularly known as Rodin-Hood. And another exciting thing about him is he doesn't wear his socks. And I think by now you know who I'm talking about. None other than Alok Kejriwal. Alok, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much, Vishal. Such an honor.
No, it's been a long time since we got to speak, and I think there's nothing time be better to have you here, especially after your blockbuster book. It's making the charts everywhere. I've been seeing it with many people, including my son, who's a big fan.
That's a great testimony, right? If your son has it without you telling him to get it, then, we're halfway there.
So let me ask you the first question, which actually my son prompted me. And his question was that after reading this book, his whole thing was that you were most influenced by your grandparents. And how was that? I mean, his point was, how was your relationship with your grandparents and how did that shape up to what you are today?
So that's a very interesting observation, and he's absolutely right. I've been very fortunate that I had my Nana Nani in my life from very early on. As I've joked in the book, in the Marwadi family business of Marwadi families, like where I come from, people get married very early. I got married at 22. My wife was 19.
Wow.
So you can imagine what would have happened earlier. So my grandparents were in their 40s when I was born.
Okay, they're very young.
Very young. And for some reason, I'm writing in my second book, I actually try and delve on why I think I began to stay with them in the first place. Because there's no logical reason. And I want to introduce this theme as we go along, that there are many things that don't have a reason or don't have a why, but they happen. So just imagine my parents, so well-to-do, everything fine, living at Nepean Road.
Yeah, you are like the Sobo kid.
And giving their only son and only grandson to my mom's parents, who were also luckily right, at Pedder Road, and me growing up with them. So to put the answer for your son, and we're so amazingly talking about so many children and sons and grandparents, I think it was divine intervention. These are things that happen to you for some karmic reason. And it was unbelievable, to have grandparents who were not just grandparents, but guardians, mentors, and, beyond what parents could be. And to me, who I think back now, actually spiritual partners.
No, and I think it's very important that you're giving so much importance to your grandparents, because in today's world where there are nuclear families, people don't really get to see their grandparents and other people around. The structure of the society is very different. But you were living in this joint family system. Is that where you were from?
So I was very lucky. It was only my grandparents and me. So it was only the three of us. So there was a flavor of them, but no one else. Thank God for that. And, we were like, they were parents. They just seemed to be a little older, which I think today a lot of parents are the same age as my grandparents. And it was phenomenal.
And growing up in South Bombay, right, there was this, this was again, I would say 80s and 90s of India where there was so much happening. And South Bombay was like the Indian capital of modernism and style and all of that. So how were you balancing at one end your, let me use the word, your spiritual upbringing and the modernization which was going on?
So it's a very interesting question. And, I think I must introduce the concept that whatever you wish for usually doesn't happen, and what you don't wish for usually happens early on for life to teach you what to, to be humble. So, Vishal, when I was growing up, I was very cocky, a South Bombay kid.
Exactly,
so
yeah.
I used to laugh, keep boss passport lekar aao. What the hell? I'll not go beyond.
And I was always a Chembur boy, you can imagine. I was a suburban kid.
So I used to always mock, well, very innocently, because we're not that, we don't do it with malintention. I used to innocently, say, what the hell is all this, man? Worli is where my life ends. And very early, when my entrepreneur journey began, everything I did for my first company contest to win was always after Worli. I used to laugh at, girls from Delhi and say, what is all this Delhi-giri? I got married to a girl from Delhi. So the thing is that life kind of completely flattened out. And it just made me understand that these biases are weird. Having said that, I think there's a lot of inspiration from the world around me. I owe a lot to my school, Campion School, where I grew up. It was a Jesuit school, but it imbibed in me a lot of the principles that I live with even today. So all in all,
and Campion School has some of the most amazing, alumni. Even now, I know a lot of people from that school. So what was there in that particular school which kind of helped you?
I think three things. One was geographically, there were only 3 or 4 schools that really had, the gravity of all the established families coming together. So that was one location. The other was that because the Jesuit fathers were so obsessed by quality education, my father... And discipline. So it's so funny, we could not... I still remember my principal and I couldn't look him in the eye. We used to walk looking at the floor. And when you grow up with that culture of discipline, it gets into your DNA.
And you never took up sports because Campion also had a very big sports culture. Yes. And, I know there were a lot of athletics and cricket and all that also happening.
So I was a fat, lazy slob, and I would always get, I was used to max my papers, but I used to get a 9 or 10 in PT, which was the worst grade. But a very funny, life-defining moment happened to me in my 9th standard. I sat next to this guy who's now become a very world-renowned fashion designer. And he told me one day, he said, "Aren't you ashamed of yourself?" And I was like shocked. I said, "Why?" He says, "Because, you look so pathetic hanging on that pull-up, wall like an animal, you're just so helpless and you just dangle your feet." And he made me look like I was so shockingly sad. And then he drew me these 5 or 6 exercises on what I should do to become better. Finally, Vishal, he introduced me to Rocky's Eye of the Tiger. And he said,
music, that became your theme song.
So I began running in the 9th standard, and I would run from my house at Pedder Road to Mahalakshmi, Breach Candy and back. And my life changed. Not that I ever got into sports, but I became at least physically aware and physically fitter. And I could do 11 pull-ups by the end of the 10th standard, which was a huge kind of achievement for me.
Wow. And you also then ended up in one of the South Bombay colleges. Again, you never stepped outside South Bombay.
Right. So to be honest, that wasn't, I must tell you the dark side of business families, and, I'm very blatant about it. Especially in the old, Indian business families, there's always a culture of saying keep the sons protected, keep them in control, which means keep them in your eyesight. And I was always encouraged to do commerce, which is actually not my subject. I'm a science guy through and through. And Sydenham was the most prominent.
College,
yeah, and it was a commerce college. It was tough to get in at that time. So I took it as a challenge to get in.
So you were a science kid all your life.
Yeah.
That's what you thought.
Completely. I was always a science kid. My best marks were in physics, chem, math.
But you are so good at business and numbers and economics and, all your posts talk about business.
Right.
I've never seen a single post about science.
That's true. So what happened was, for a long time in my life, for almost 10 or 12 years, I felt very deprived. That I've been deprived of an engineering education. I've been deprived of being a tech guy, even before tech came into our lives, right? And
at that time, tech was engineering.
Correct.
Civil engineering, and those were the things in fashion, yeah.
But it's the only time when I launched my first business, when I began to realize that, you can buy certain things, you can get certain people, but the fundamental value creation comes from a deep, innate understanding of numbers and business. And luckily, I'd studied accounting for 7 years by then.
Wow. Because
in our ICSE, we did 9th and 10th accounts and then 5 years in Sydenham. So I feel that accounting education was one of the best gifts I gave myself.
You won't believe I was so terrible in accounting. I still don't know how to do, I only know one thing. Debit what comes in, credit what goes out. That's it.
That's fundamental, right?
That's it. But I don't know. I can't read a balance sheet or any of this. Right. But you were you became a pro at all of that.
Yeah. So while I was in college, I trained myself to read balance sheets. And I used to always watch, Wall Street, the movie came out then. So I was very enamored by that so-called Wall Street world. And, there were people that, Carl Icahn and people that people do not have heard of today who are my heroes. Yeah. And I would say, let's deconstruct a balance sheet in 20 minutes and find out what's the hidden agenda.
Deconstruct a balance sheet.
Yeah. And I did that for a long time. I mentioned in my book that I actually presented balance sheet reports to Jindal Iron and Steel without them asking me. So saying, who's this 18-year-old kid who's looking at a balance sheet? So I found great pleasure in doing that.
Wow, that's quite a hobby to have, right? I mean, when people are at 16, 17, people have, very different hobbies, and your hobby was to deconstruct balance sheets.
Right.
Well, this deconstructing balance sheet took you directly to your own family business. And, that's what surprises me, right? I mean, you could have just done your family business and, everything was set. I think your life was programmed, right? You have gone to the best school in South Bombay, the best college in South Bombay, and now you're going to take over the empire and keep multiplying that, and life goes on happily ever after. What made you leave your business?
So I had these funny incidences in my life where I think I've been like, I'm dragged out of my comfort zones. Something happens that drags me out. I hope it doesn't happen again. I was very happy in my family business. There's a lot of...
And that was about socks.
Socks. Actually, from where we...
It could literally take your socks off.
Absolutely, literally. From where we're sitting right now and doing this, it's about a half a mile to my factory. And 45,000 square feet of real estate, South Bombay, churning out socks with machines. Nothing was wrong with the business. Nothing was wrong with my passion for it.
And it was a sexy business at that time. Being in textiles was I'm just calling it a branch of textiles. Textiles was a big business.
And it was profitable, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Reliance was made on textiles.
Yeah, Vimal. Only Vimal.
Exactly. So it was all hunky-dory, but as most business families have to endure, there's a lot of friction that happens between uncles, brothers, nephews. And it blew up in my life. And it was something that I just couldn't handle. I think age was on my side. Maybe ego was still not that established. I couldn't understand the why. And I think that was my inspiration to go, solo on my own without knowing what I'm doing. Also, incidentally, that was the time I was most regretting not being a tech guy.
Oh, okay.
Because, when you want to do things on your own, the first thing you want to do is learn how to do many things ASAP. And
so the hole in you was the hole of technology which you wanted to fill.
That's right.
And that was like, look at something new which is tech related.
That's right.
Okay. So that's, because, otherwise I was not able to figure out that what prompted you, because I know contesting was one thing, but I think that was just an idea.
I mean, who cared? I could have done, anything. It was just to latch on to something that was tech enabled.
So when was the first time you used the internet?
So I've described that, it's a very, very big moment in my life. In the book, I'll just quickly take you through that story. There was a large computerized machine I'd imported from Italy, and I was the owner of that because I'd gone to Italy to train on it. For those who understand, manufacturing, this was CAD-CAM.
So early days of CAD-CAM.
Yeah, early days of CAD. I knew pneumatics, I knew everything there. And this machine broke down in the factory. And there was nobody telling us what to do. Italy was Italy. It did shut down at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Nobody replied. My father became very wild. He said, dude, this is a 25 lakh rupee machine. You've blown up our money. And luckily we just got internet a week ago. So I looked up.
This is 1997, I guess.
This is 97, 98.
BSNL dial-up connection.
That long shrieking sound of the modem. In the end, I looked up the problem, and there was a washer in the Siemens fan, suction fan, that seemed to be the problem. That's what the website of Siemens said. You might have a small, washer problem. So Vishal, we got a washer from the local Parel market, and it cost 2 rupees.
Yeah.
And my machine started up again. And that day, entirely new world opened up to me, which is knowledge at your fingertips, and you can do anything you want.
Mm-hmm. No, and I think that's really what about it. So in 1997, you were already using CAD-CAM, and so you were already far ahead of your time. But again, being ahead of your time is very different than leaving all of this to start a business which nobody understands.
Right.
Do you remember what was the reaction of your family when you told them you're going to do this?
So there's a very
and you were already married at that time, right?
I had 2 children, Vishal.
Oh, you already had 2 children.
I had two girls.
So it's like, if you are still single, you can still do this, but doing this after 2 girls, and I know in Marwadi families, you have to get them married. All those things are there, right?
So it's harakiri, right?
Yeah.
It's completely out of the question. The first thing was my dad said, dude, understand this. The day you walk out of this factory, you'll never be able to come back again. So that's even worse. Like
property se tumko nikal diya jayega.
Not that bad, but you're only employable by your family because you don't have any other qualification. So this is a call out to those who think family business is permanent employment. It is not.
Yeah.
And then if that's shutting down on you, you could be on the road literally, right? Not literally, but for a very clear reason, I thought I had something going for me. So the Taj used to have a restaurant now also called Shamiana. And I told my family at that time sitting there, my wife and my sisters, hey, you know what, I'm going to do something. And they kept giggling. They were laughing at some stupid joke. And I kept drawing their attention. I said, can you give me a minute, please? So they looked at me. And I said in a very pompous way that I'm going to launch contest2win.com. And the first person who began bursting out laughing was my wife. And she said, it sounded so stupid and silly. She just laughed and everybody laughed after them. So I was so disappointed. I said, if that's the reaction of my family, I don't know what's going to happen to me, man. But my father said something very profound. He said, do whatever you think you want to do. Just remember, all things start small. So don't give up on it just because it takes a long time to cultivate. It will be small.
No, but I mean, that's a very important. Normally, right, you don't hear these things from parents and things. They're like, oh, why are you doing this? But your father kind of, in a way, encouraged you to do this.
Because he was fed up of the frustration I was facing also. So it had gone on to him, right? And it's very hard to see your children.
And was it like this कि यार एक बार कर लेते दो एक बार ये कर लेगा तो ये भी भूत निकल जाएगा, then he will do business. I mean, that could also be another way of thinking about it.
Absolutely. So it's a very old practice in Marwari families. Give a son 3-4 lakh rupees then. Now it's 30-40 lakhs to say, beta, tu invest kar stock market mein. You know he's going to burn it all.
And then,
so he becomes very humble.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's tried, like you said, a sideline. He'll, completely wreck it and he'll come back crying. I don't think this was the intention, but they did think it would go well.
This is the formula. Let's put it that way.
That's the formula, right?
That's the formula, right? That, give him something to do. And, but yeah, I mean, in your case, I also really liked the name. So Contest to Win, this is again the first, literally the internet 1.0 of India. A lot of companies were very simplified. There was bawarchi.com, there was indiagames.com, Rediff was rediffusion ka rediff kar diya tha, India Times was there, but you were like Contest to Win. So the name itself was very unique. Was there a story behind picking this name?
I think it was very direct. I kept thinking of saying, look, what can I tell people in a line? I didn't have that positioning and all the brand jargon stuff that people talk about today. But I had a vision that, if all the world's contests can be here, then it's a contest to win site. And I didn't, to be honest, to win came much later, but I was thinking of contest world, contest universe. And then they just came together. You know how it is. Many things just happen when they are supposed to happen.
No, but I think from a branding perspective, I remember the hand.
That's right.
It is, the very iconic brand of that time on how you created and how you then used the to win. So this was not thought that time. It just happened in the hindsight.
Absolutely,
Yeah, and I remember we were just talking about it, meeting you outside of Sterling Theatre. And this was right about the time when you were closing your funding with E-Ventures,
That's right.
E-Ventures.
Exactly.
And you had, I think your daughter had just born, and I think I was raise money, I don't know, kuch ho raha tha. And you had mentioned that Lakshmi aayi hai.
So beautiful.
And I think that's really what happened, right? You had literally 2 Lakshmis come in.
Amazing.
The money had come in, as well as the whole idea of Contest to Win had got the funding to kind of go ahead.
Yep.
So, once you started Contest to Win, you did not have a technical background even then. You came from a business background. How did you build a whole team and how did you put this whole thing together? Because people even struggle for doing it today,
right,
with all these resources and all these networks and all these websites and job sites. You were able to create an amazing team, especially coming from a business side. I mean, I always came from a product and tech side, right? So I think it's a little easier to find business guys. Of course, people will debate that now, but in your case, how did you do that? How did you put your team together?
Right. So the principles, right, what worked for me in my earlier job at the factory and what works for me even today is, the first is the intention, Vishal. The intent of what you start to do and why you do. If it's pure and if it's clearly, not something that you're doing for a time gap, stopgap movement, it crystallizes itself into something meaningful.
बोलते हैं ना, इरादे नेक हो तो मंजिल आसान होती है.
Superb. Well said.
तो इरादे नेक होने चाहिए, right?
So I was very clear. And the second thing is expectation management, both from people and yourself. To manage yourself is a task. So you would meet, and we all meet even today, opportunists, people who are not qualified, and the desperation takes over. In spirituality, we call it feverishness. When your feverishness takes over your mind, you make mistakes. So because of the business training I had, I always had P&L in my mind. PNL is the most wonderful acronym I've ever come across. A few others, but PNL is sounds like temple bells to me, So I would always judge by PNL. And that let the riffraff never come into the company. He was only looking for money.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, when you do something interesting, you were at India Games. Someone was just telling me today about your launch party. Just imagine the party you had at the Taj where you got kidnapped. Now today, of all the days, we met someone who was pitching some PR activity and they were telling me about your party.
Yeah, that's how crazy we did things, right?
Right. So the point is that if you're putting out something meaningful, it will attract people.
So for people, just to give you a glimpse of what that thing was, since India Games had done all these games on India and Pakistan, and I had literally got threats from terrorist organizations that time. So the idea of the press conference was that during the press conference, there will be some terrorists who will come and kidnap me at the Taj. I mean, of course, it sounds all crazy now, but way back in, I think, 2000, that's how we had a launch of India Games with a press conference, and we had paid up these actors to become terrorists. So, of course, it sounds completely crazy, and don't do it again, especially in any 5-star hotel.
So it began to get, it's like, not to use a good analogy, but Ocean's 11.
Yeah.
The most odd people come together. So it was like a jungle of weirdos coming together with their own skill and their own interest to do something.
The Vishal Gondal Show will be right back after this break.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another awesome week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you're not following us on social media, please make sure that you do. We're IVM Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please do. With the upcoming election season just around the corner, in case you really wanted a deep dive into some of the issues that matter, you should check out some of the shows on our network. Shows like Ganatantra, The Seen and the Unseen, The Pragati Podcast, Pulyabazi, and even How to Citizen look into some of the issues that really do matter. On The Seen and the Unseen, Amit Verma's guest is Milind Vaishnav, author and senior fellow at Carnegie. They talk about his book, When Crime Pays, and speculate about the upcoming Indian elections. On IVM Like, Abbas, Madhuri, Radhika, and Abhineet are in conversation about their pop culture consumption and unpopular stuff that they like. On the Sponge Podcast, Ambi Parmeshwaran talks about how an agency should build arguments and try harder to convey messages effectively. On Paperback, Satyajit and Rachita share bits of their interaction with Yuval Noah Harari and discuss his book 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. On episode 6 of Ganatantra, Alok and Saryu talk to postdoctoral research fellow Dr. Diego Mairano. They discuss the political and social implications of Indira Gandhi's last term in office. On the second episode of the second season of Echoes of India, Anirudh talks about the emergence of languages during the Mauryan Empire. And with that, let's continue with your show.
But just to kind of put this, and again, there's no one way to reach God. So while you were all about PNL, I was always about product. I do not understand PNL even today. My point was, if you're creating a great product, if people are going to love it, you're going to make money. So let us focus on that, and everything else will take care of itself. That has been my theory.
That's great.
And your theory is the opposite. Take care of the PNL and the product, and everything else will take care of itself too.
So let me rephrase it, right? The PNL remains sacrosanct. The point is that, if you don't have PNL in your mind, the best products can never launch. The best products may launch but never seen the light of day because they run out of money.
They're intellect. Yeah.
Exactly. So you have to have some golden thread that ties it all together.
So PNL is the fuel and product is the engine.
That's right.
And of course you need a fast engine, but you need fuel efficiency at the same time.
Exactly.
And as long as you can balance fuel efficiency and speed of the engine, I think that's when you get the perfect car.
Completely. And just so that, I make, kind of indicate, tell people who are listening what I really mean by that. Therefore, because of the PNL discipline, we were very, very clear that this business has to make money, which was unheard of in .com times in 2000 when money was flowing in like rain from Mumbai monsoon, right?
Yeah.
And we kept saying we have to make money. And the VCs would say, what the hell are you talking about, man? We're giving you money to burn and you're saying make money.
Yeah.
But 2001, that's the discipline that kept us alive.
So the story I have is on that part that I have to thank Reserve Bank of India for saving us. And the story is that we, like you had also hired a senior head from Pepsi to run our marketing and all of that. And we had decided a whole campaign and we were going to spend about a crore and a half. And TV commercial was already made. We spent some 20 lakhs on making the TV commercial. However, at that time, you needed RBI's approval to spend on advertising because these companies were all in Hong Kong and Singapore. So we had done a deal with MTV and whoever else, and our application had gone to RBI, and RBI rejected our application.
Amazing.
And we were all angry. But that money which we saved finally was like there for us in the, which took us through the last few months of the company.
Amazing.
Had we spent that money, it would have been game over. So, sometimes, people always cry about all these regulations and all these things which slow you down. But sometimes these things are the ones which really help you.
Completely. So they're all gifts that come to you unknown.
Absolutely. So how was your experience with Pepsi? Because again, we both served Pepsi at the same time.
So I got very lucky with Pepsi. I've talked about Ranga in my book a lot.
Yeah, and Ranga is now he's the golf pro, man.
Right.
I mean,
he's also doing a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
But I just found in him, which is actually a great Pepsi, kind of reflection of someone who was so exacting and driven. And, the things he would tell me, even before he came on board, he would go on the Pepsi truck, serving Pepsi to all the panwalas.
Yeah.
And he would tell me that they would treat him like a driver because they were wearing the same blue uniform. Mm-hmm. And his job was to make sure that the logo...
Blue stripes.
And the logo of Pepsi remains forward facing so the consumer knows what that bottle is. That attention to detail at the panwala distribution would inspire me. And tales like this would say, this is the guy I want to learn from.
No, but you already had business with you. So why would you need another business guy?
Because I think, Vishal, the PNL that I came from, or the business background I came from, was a very retail, trade, hosiery, manufacturing, Sadar Bazaar, Kalba Devi mindset. Mm-hmm. So a multinational is not just about, talking about marketing.
So you thought that he could go and sell it to other big brands?
I think I was looking for a culture change. Let me give you the greatest example of this. So as a Marwadi, I would refuse to work for 5 days a week. I said, dude, we're 7 days to theek hai, maybe. Chalo 6 din to karna hi padega. Very first day Ranga came, he said something very astonishing. He said, Alok, let's take the list of the top Fortune 500 companies. You tell me which of them work 6 days and I'll work 6 days. Now you need a mind like that to tell you that. Mm-hmm. So amongst anything else, I said I need to import a brand that I work for rather than will never be able to achieve. So if I want to serve the Pepsis of the world, I might as well one guy sitting inside my company.
No, and that's the perfect way of thinking about it, right? That, in your case, while your whole idea was voluntary, in my case, the funny thing was my investors, and we had Praveen Bhai, the great Praveen Gandhi, and all these people on my board, and they were like, Vishal, I was 22 or 23. They're like, you are a good techie. Mm. What you need is grey hair. What you need is somebody who can be representing you in business. So the whole idea of hiring guys in my team, the so-called business guys, was because the investors thought that Vishal cannot do this. He's a product guy. Let him make the product and let somebody else do the business. So that was really the whole rationale in my case.
Yeah, and it's justifiably so.
Yeah.
I mean, in all goodness, like you said, about the RBI, sometimes investors do things to us which we cringe and crib about. But in long foresight, they have their reasons, right?
Exactly.
And again, it's the PNL discipline, Vishal. I'm a PNL guy. Yeah. I have got my money given to this guy.
And were you also the legal guy? You also did contracts and stuff on your own?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like that. I am a legally, legal eye trained guy. So I know SHA, SHO, I know SSA. Very early.
Even now, I'm really bad at all these things. So the funny thing in my case is that I had never even heard of these things. So the first time I got a term sheet, I was like, ye kya hai? And
so sweet.
How, the funny thing is that I had gone to the bowling company that time. There was this place.
Yeah.
And I met a college senior of mine doing bowling. And I told him, what do you do? And he said, I'm a lawyer. And I said, you're hired. It's a different thing that this guy is now one of the top legal minds in India. His name is Soma Shekhar.
Of course.
He was with JS Law.
I know him. Yeah.
And Soma... and I was literally among his first cases.
Amazing.
So he represented me in my, with investors and all of that. But that was the best thing which could happen to me because a random visit to the bowling alley got me a lawyer.
Right.
At least in your case, you were yourself the legal mind.
I had some inkling of what I was signing. But let me tell you this, Vishal. We were amongst the first in the country to even get those documents.
Wow.
What is standard called SHA and SSA today, no one had ever done.
Absolutely. You know, we were almost the first cohort together, right?
Exactly.
I mean, we are the ones who have survived .com 1, .com 2, and now Mobilecom, and now Geo World. I don't know, there are so many generations of this.
Correct.
But it was fascinating, right? The early days of internet, all the excitement going on. But in your case, you not only raised money for contests to win, you then went on raising money for multiple companies. You had games to win, you had media to win, and I don't know how many to win companies you created. So what was the idea behind that?
So there was a very simple balance sheet ideology that when you get acquired for a service or a product or a offering. You don't get acquired like, Hyundai or Daewoo. They have multiple business lines and they do what they do in their own way. My idea was that if I have a services business, which is not a product platform business or something else, then the acquirer and even the financer of that will be different. Mm-hmm. And this has been the case with most business groups in India. Some are now infamous, some are famous. Yep. But if you look at Reliance, if you look at a lot of these other guys, they've raised money multiple times in different businesses because it appeals to different people. So, beauty lies in the eye of the beholder. That was a thinking at that time. And the other big reason was, and I did that successfully in 2 cases, when you separate out businesses, even at the management level, you can give far deeper ownership and you can almost make it autonomous. So in my 2 mobile twins in China and in India, neither was I managing those businesses, neither was I financing them, and they were all run by independent people.
And you were just a shareholder in those businesses?
I was just a shareholder. So you couldn't do that in your parent company because then, you have so many business lines to do.
No, but again, my point is people can't do that even today. People are struggling, and we know cases of what's happening with our friends at Ola and Flipkart and Snapdeal and so many issues with investors. You are like a pro at managing investors, right? Because I used to always admire this quality of yours because my point is, listen, I can't deal with so many investors. I have one company, isi ko badhayenge aur isi ko karenge. But you literally created an empire very early on in the .com days. Not many people were able to do it.
So I think I got lucky. I also got, people on my side who understood the value of what we were doing. We had SoftBank, who was a very early investor.
This is the early investor.
And, you have quality investors like them, then they support you, they guide you.
Yeah.
They did a JV with us, not in the parent company, but a new company.
Exactly.
So in the investors leading, then, you can follow suit.
Yeah. But I think the big setback to you was, and I remember you telling me that your VC had gone bankrupt, E-Ventures. I think that kind of created a huge problem.
It was a very funny situation, actually. I used to keep calling E-Ventures like a good boy. I used to keep calling my owners every Monday. And I called up this same office I'd called up for many, many months. And nobody picked up. And then finally, when I kept calling, a watchman picked up. And he spoke in Hindi. And I was shocked. I thought number badli ho gaya, So I said, Bhaiya, kahan hai sab log? He said, sir, company band ho gayi.
Wow.
Now I keep joking about that, most .coms failed, but here the VC failed. So the good news is that they had given us the money and then they failed. The bad news is that mentors had vanished. Mm-hmm. At that time, you needed mentors more than anything else. But I think, Vishal, it all happens with a reason, right? I mean, if they went away and we were on our own, a source of supply of money went away. Mm-hmm. ICICI was my other VC, and of course, they had also given up on .com. So in the end, we were in a very hard place, not even in a rocky place.
And the world is so small. So who's on my board now? It is Bala and Ruchir.
Amazing.
So they are exactly the same people who were, or there was one of the teams working with you,
Bala was absolutely my board member.
Okay.
So the point is that time it was seemed very sad and very unfortunate, but in retrospect it seems like the best thing that have happened because the interference went away. You know how much interference VCs can do.
Absolutely.
The money obviously was there till we had raised it, but the new supply went away. And the only thing you could do therefore was make money to survive.
No, and I think, your P&L approach is really the holy grail, right? Because had you not had the P&L approach, we know the money went dry for several years, right? The whole VC, today we are talking of a different era, but I would say 2003 to 2010,
14, up to 14.
Up to 2014, you can even extend it. Almost that 10-year period was very bad for startups. in general.
Yes.
It's only now after the whole it started with the Flipkart upswing with Tiger. I think that could be a milestone. Before that, it was like Flipkart kaun hai?
But I still don't agree with the long-term longevity of the balance sheet model versus the P&L model. And Games to Win, I'm happy to share with you, is now very, very profitable. And we're not VAS, we're not gambling, we're not rummy. We will inshallah list 2023. That's the plan.
Yep.
Because you make real money and you make real profit. But the point I'm making is not about Games to Win. Vishal, long term, if you look at 50 years of capitalism in the US, 100 years of capitalism in the world, nowhere have markets rewarded losses.
Absolutely.
Nowhere. So you can be blips on a long, it's like the BSE. People say, "Maine khoya, maine banaya," but 1981 is when. Can you guess what the BSE was in 1981?
500 or
take one more guess for me. It's 30,000 today. Let's say.
Yeah.
Take one more guess.
Maybe 800, 500 to 800. Yeah.
It was 100.
100. Wow.
The BSE started in 1981.
Wow.
And it's 30,000 today.
Wow.
So you have a 14% IRR compounded because of what they've done. No business there is a loss-making business. So I think when you stretch time, the loss makers will always have to pay a heavy price.
No, and I think in your case, with Games to Win now, you have such a huge long tail of content, which is giving you money which you have made, years back. And even if they give you $100 a month, that's all bottom line.
I'm so amazed. I'll call you for my investor meeting because nowhere has anybody articulated it so well.
No, I know this model, right? We used to do this.
Exactly. And
we used to do this all the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it just manifested in the Android and iTunes world. And I keep trying to tell people that, if you can allow me to talk for a minute, that the business model, again, P&L, is where you think through it, right? So people who I meet, and you meet for sure, says, "Sir, I'm going to be the next PUBG, make the next Angry Birds." What is in my mind, sorry to be honest, yeah, sure, do it. We know the rate of success.
Yeah.
And one last point on P&L, which really shocked me, changed my mind completely, or rather cemented my approach. In Mobile to Win, we had done a game on Sholay. And I'd met one of the Sippis.
Rohan Sippi, yeah. Sorry, Shasha Sippi.
I met GP Sippi, I think.
GP Sippi. The Shasha Sippi is also
Shasha was the nephew. Yeah. And Ramesh Sippi actually I met, who was the founding father, by chance. And I just ventured a question to him. I said, "Sir, how did you make Sholay?" And I was thinking I'm going to get a very profound answer. And he said, "Arey yaar, mujhe pata hota to main 100 aur bana leta." That day, I figured out that the P&L is never accidental. It is always planned.
Yep.
So you start by saying, "I'll make enough games to keep my fires burning." If in that something uchlos to the top, we're happy.
No, absolutely right. So it is a portfolio business. If you look at any entertainment business, Disney, why is it successful? Because it is now, out of one Marvel franchise of Spider-Man, created 30 other franchises which never existed. So the bottom line is that it is a business of portfolio. It is a business where you will always get one or two hits, but the balance is what gets you the revenue.
Perfect.
So it's always been there. People always think that you need to make a hit. And I think the other big problem with investors is that they have all gone to these gambling business models of rummy and all these card plays and player buy. And they're all going to get burned badly.
And without taking names, Vishal, just to share, because I want to keep, throw this out to as many people as I can. So I got approached by a guy recently in a fintech conference, and he said, "Alok, I have something very urgent to talk to you about." So I said, "Sure, man." He said, "For your rummy game, I have now got a package solution." So I said, "Hey, let me put these two away. I don't have a rummy game, but I want to know about your solution, because this guy's a big five. He's one of those Ernst, E&Y, Bain types." So I said, "Solution to bata yaar, rummy to baad mein karenge." He said, "I can now predict what percentage and who in your game will commit suicide."
Wow.
And rather than you getting alert about them by threats, we will isolate them for you so that you can stop making them play the game.
And my prediction is that it is just a matter of time. The government will have to ban these games because there will be a huge social unrest. There will be suicides, people going bankrupt.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
it's right in front of us. So, it's a lazy way to try and make some quick bucks.
Yeah.
It's like bootlegging,
Exactly.
It doesn't work.
Exactly. And anyway, so while these business models do survive, and I'm sure they'll get their investors putting money in them, I think what really interests me is that you are again the cat with 7 lives. And not only that, you've also made the the journey to China, which is a tough journey, and you don't seem to be a big fan of it.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, after having made money there and having made my first exit there, I was just appalled by things that I saw that were not part of my karma. Maybe that's a different world. Maybe there's a different destiny there.
And what are your thoughts of all these Chinese apps suddenly becoming big in India? There is TikTok, and even news apps are launching some News Dog and News Cat. I don't know. There are like, suddenly the Indian app store and consumer apps for the first time ever is being dominated by Chinese apps.
So if you look at the TikTok app, very clearly when you see the content, you know what the content is.
Yeah.
And sleaze is always attractive, but sleaze always gets regulated
And shut down at some
and
point,
it doesn't remain long term. If you want to do sleaze, then do sleaze like sleaze. Let's not do it like a regular app.
Yeah, don't call it social media.
Exactly. So I think this undercover, I got it in China because the government is in cahoots with me. Only Sohu, NetEase and Sina can launch stuff. I can't launch an MMOG without someone, a Shanda, telling me what to do.
Exactly.
That doesn't work here.
So I remember on that note that you had got this car game from Korea.
Right.
And I had told you also. Remember, you spoke to me about it.
So let's spin this around.
Yeah.
Actually, I got an investor who said, I want to put $5-6 million in you to do an MMORPG.
Yeah.
The only guy I knew who I talk to was Vishal Gondal. So I called up Vishal Gondal, almost knowing what you're going to tell me.
Okay.
So this is very interesting. We'll articulate it. So Vishal Gondal, the product tech guy, said, "Bhai, mat kar. It's your words. It's a complete waste of time and money. These things don't work." So the product tech guy told me, absolutely no. Then the Marwadi Banya PNL guy came in my mind, and you won't believe what I connived. And I'm proudly saying this because everybody's happy. I said, this guy's giving me $6 million, right? Let's allocate 600,000 to the experiment and 5.4 year अपने bank में रखते हैं.
Exactly.
And that's what we did. So in the first board meeting of Games to Win, they said, how's business? And I said, business is very good because we don't have a business. It's over.
Only loss of $600,000.
I've saved 5.4 million. So these guys were so exasperated. They said, well, then do whatever you want. And that was a license to do whatever else we wanted to do.
So that's the amazing way of thinking about. That's the business guy thinking, right? The product guy would have said, don't take their money. These guys are going to come and kill you.
So there's a saying in Marwadi that Lakshmi ko kabhi thukrana nahi chahiye.
Yeah, I know,
Take her in, man. Take her in.
I know. I have to learn all this from you, man. I mean, also, while you were running all these companies, you also had these amazing team members who were like, each one of them have now done so many big companies and big products on their own. How do you attract these people to join you?
So I meet people as we meet them along, Vishal. We've all met very interesting people along the way. You have some stars now on your team. Mm-hmm. And very often I feel, and I've written this in my book, that, never feel shy or ashamed or guilty or even petrified of approaching someone to be a partner. Rajiv Hiranandani used to sit with me, and I would call him my sofa partner. Used to sit in sofas outside offices. Mm-hmm. And I would see in him a reflection of me. He's saying, this is me, man. He's sitting with me, pitching to one guy, and Shaw Wall is begging for 1 lakh rupees. Mm-hmm. So we told him to come on board, and so forth. So I think we all meet them. Very few of us identify them as partners. We leave them there saying that he's a client or he's a great guy, but we never think him as part of us.
So you built, contests to win, games to win. You did this whole Chinese experiment, and then you ended up having this big fight or whatever with your VC. And you are possibly among the few people who have publicly spoken about the problems VC can create, because normally people always think that VC is like this good guy who gives you money and then makes you a millionaire. That's the normal image. Not many people talk about the dark side of investors. So in a nutshell, what would you tell people to be careful about? Because you already know the good parts of VCs. What are the not so good parts, and how can they be careful about?
So the 3 other forms of VC, vapor capital, vampire capital and vulture capital.
Okay.
So very simple, right? Vapor capital is the kind of guy who never has more money than what he gave you. And you don't want them because they're only going to ask for more, ask questions and never give you more. Typically, a lot of people we know have got fussoed with them on these construction guys, jute guys. I used to go to these Bombay meetups of some people. One guy का कोई plastic का धंधा है, वो बाल्टी बनाता है, उसको 1 crore डालना है. This is vapor capital. It'll be problems, but they're still okay. Vulture and vampire is, vulture is the kind of guy who just wants to flip you because he believes that he's now not in India. So that means everything in India should be sold. His theme has moved, no man, now games are not a cool theme. So you're like a disposable soft toy that got picked up in the mall and has to be thrown away. You have to be very careful of them, and you can make out from their past deeds what they have. The real problem is the vampire guy who takes it personally.
Okay.
A lot of people don't know how to handle an investor because it becomes an ego thing.
Okay.
And when they fight you on a personal level, then money doesn't matter.
It's their ego against anything else.
And,
right?
the capitalist always has higher ego because he's the capitalist. This has happened in the world from the day one. So you must understand humility when it comes to capital. And it's not you, it's the supply of capital versus the recipient.
No, but it was you, Alok, who could fight these guys, right? How does an average Joe who's raised money for his first startup, how can they deal with these people?
So I think they have to be aware of the lineage of money. Today, like they do so many tests and, kind of checks and balances on us. I think many people do more checks and balances on hiring a manager than they do on their VC.
No, but the view is that, listen here, I wanted money and these were the only guys willing to give me the money. It's not like there are 10 people giving.
Which is not bad either, right, Vishal? I think half money taken is 90%.
Lakshmi is coming to their point is, let's take this.
Then I think adapt. See, no one in their right mind gives you money to lose. So fundamentally, you're both on the same side of the ship. It's only when the entrepreneur does weird things that the VC begins to get worried. And I think there are 7 things that an entrepreneur should not do, which will anyway annoy any investor. So if you are ingrained with that, I think a lot of young entrepreneurs become cowboys. The guy from housing.com, he's a great example.
Yeah. I mean, he was not only a cowboy, he was a crazy cowboy.
Yeah, so then you kind of are taking, "Aa bel mujhe maar" you're doing, which is not interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there is a thin line of difference between, having a healthy debate or healthy discussion with your investor and being destructive to the company. I think that was clearly
Completely. And we know the rules, and anybody logical, I mean, if you've got so far ahead as to attract capital, then you're the only guy who will destroy.
Yeah. But there's this other saying ki bolte na, nadi mein reh ke magarmat se bair mat karo. And you went on record, you've written blog posts, even in your book you have mentioned about VCs like Norwest, who are right now big name VCs in the world, forget India.
Correct.
Has that in any way impacted your relationship with other VCs? Do they look at this skeptically, not skeptically?
Not at all, because what is being presented and what is factual. And what I've done in the period of time is presented the view and my view, and they were right in their point of view and I was right in my point of view. So if they're getting so Vishal, when I'm a small entrepreneur with small bets here and there, look at the Mindtree L&T example. Look at the Walmart Bansal example. Look at all the things that we see all around us. I mean, if the Siddhartha guy can throw his shares away and walk off because he gets better money, then what's the problem? So the capital will never have loyalty other than the highest bidder. And as the sooner people understand it is the better. So I can be emotional, but that's fine.
No, but you've been always very, very clear about, your thought process around how investors are being managed.
Yes.
So how are you managing them differently in games to win compared to before? What is the difference?
So one was selection. I very clearly selected those who I could live with for 15, 20 years. I mean, we live with our wives hopefully till we die, but investors are almost wives and spouses. And the second thing is very clearly and early establish the ground rules. A lot of entrepreneurs are scared. I'll give you one great example, Vishal. ESOPs. ESOPs is always touchy because, it's dilution. And VC is always worried that this guy is going to take my cap table and, throw it around.
Yeah.
Now the point is, boss, but that's what you've built your company for, right? You've not built it for yourself. So when you tell your VCs very early on, this is my philosophy on ESOPs. And what do you have to say? Like we give away our shares for 0 rupees. We don't charge anything. There's a lot of discussion, there's a lot of heat, there's a lot of argument. You hear them out. But slowly and steadily you make yourself understood. This guy stands for these principles. Cash gambling games. I told my VCs long back, I will not touch gambling. I will not touch anything that harms people. And they were like, why? Because, everybody's doing it and you're ruining your own, cash flow. But to me, it's my principle. And then you fight it out on the basis of a fact versus emotion.
So also in your life, while you have hired many people, you've also fired a lot of people. How has that gone by, and do you have any tips on firing people? Because a lot of times I see people don't take that action soon enough and always wait and things only go bad.
Yeah. Same with me, Vishal. I've never been, it's getting harder and harder to let, so the older the person is, the harder it becomes to let go. And a point comes in your mind where you know this guy or girl is absolutely not creating value. Worst of all, they're not creating value for themselves. You might have a cash flow that can pay them their salary for the next 5 years. But look at what's happening to them after 5 years. So it's a very ruthless kind of mind. But when you go above that and say, I'm actually helping him rather than myself, sever the relationship, you feel better. Having said that, I think for the newer recruits, 3 months or at the most 6 months is what you should give yourself as a window and be very brutal about it. I think this whole concept of long-term employment is now question mark to long-term, ability. And in this age and time, everybody doesn't have the ability to be as efficient for years together.
Also, there's this whole debate of, is running a startup from India, this angel tax, this hajar problems are there trying to run a company in India. You've been doing this again from 1997. Have you encountered a lot of these challenges? How have you dealt with
It's a horror story, Vishal. Horror story. 2-3 years ago, we had a guy who came. It was very interesting. And he said that, I'm your service tax inspector or sales tax inspector. I don't know who the hell he was. So we laughed and we said, sir, I think you've come to the wrong company because we don't have sales tax. So this guy said, yeah, I know that. But I'm going to sit in your office till you give me a bribe to get out. Mm-hmm. And a smelly fat guy who never left the office. So when you have problems like that, you have to figure out what we call, how difficult is it to do business in India with this perspective versus how difficult is it to do something else in some other country. Mm-hmm. And I think we're very blessed, boss. At the end of the day, angel tax and this tax and some corruption is fine. You don't have a government like China who says you can't log into Facebook.
Yeah.
You don't have, we were talking to a Russian developer of ours and there was a very large sound going on in the background. So my partner asked him, I can't hear you, what's the sound? Abhi Bombay mein kya hoga, wo Ganpati bajega, taxi ka ladai hoega. He said, oh, those are the tanks of, those enemies rolling by. So we don't have that. So I think all in all, phenomenal opportunity and country. Hire the accountants and let them do their job. Yeah.
So somebody asked me the same thing and I said, listen, angel tax is not the problem. The problem is you don't have the right advisors who can help you deal with this.
Exactly.
If you are trying to do this on your own and then things go wrong, you can't blame anybody.
Exactly. And the oldest adage in this is that the harder it is, the tougher it is for other people to replicate what you do. So be happy that you've got through and now other people are struggling.
Absolutely. Suddenly I think people, so that's what has happened, right? Because of platforms like Twitter, people are just, frustrated and they are tweeting and not working to solve these problems. I think that's really part of the challenge.
Yeah. I think it's what you said. Now, everything is not DIY.
Yeah.
You have to understand that in layered economies like ours, you have to do stuff which takes time. And there are consultants for that. So why take that headache on yourself?
Hire the right people and, that'll take care of itself.
The Vishal Gondal Show will be right back after this break.
Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta. I'm B50 on Twitter. I am the host of Paisa Vaisa, the show that talks money. On my show, I speak to experts from every field of money and finance. From stock markets, equities, debt funds, credit cards, life insurance, every possible area of money and finance that you can think of. We even did an episode on cryptocurrency. I've got fantastic guests from mutual funds to personal finance experts everywhere. Robo-advisory, startups, just name it, we've got it. At Paisa Vaisa, we help you make smart decisions about money. You work hard for money. Now make your money work hard for you. New episodes out every Monday and you can listen to my show on the IVM Podcast app or any other podcasting app that you have. Paisa Vaisa is brought to you by Paytm Money.
Also, you are again I am one of those people who have set up a company in Mumbai. Suddenly investors tell me, Arey, why are you in Mumbai? You should be in Bangalore. There is no talent. And this whole notion that you either need to have your company in Bangalore or you're not a legitimate company. Have you dealt with that?
It's a very silly argument, Vishal. I've dealt with it in a mild way. I haven't had that retort thrown to me. I've not raised money for a long time, so we don't have to worry about these questions. The greatest companies in the world have been built in all the far-off locations. You won't build Starbucks from Seattle and Nike from Oregon without it being a shoe or track, center or, stuff like that. So I think these are all false, fake excuses for not understanding what is being made.
Because a lot of startups are coming to me and saying, we are thinking to move to Bangalore. I said, why? Because I can't find tech people here. I said, listen, if you can't find tech people here, there is no chance you can find them in Bangalore either, because there is Amazon and other companies who will hire them.
So the principle of P&L, all these guys are not understanding the why. They are understanding or grappling with the where. The why you can't find people in Bombay is because your comm structure needs to be tweaked to probably, motivate that guy, but then no one will poach him. You'll have to do the same thing in Bangalore, but he'll get poached every minute.
Exactly.
So they don't think through the problem, right?
Exactly.
It's like, we're in the wrong place.
Exactly. So that's what it is, right? People we are in the wrong place. We are in the wrong business. I'm trying to find a co-founder.
Yeah,
this is
it's amazing. Yeah.
I said, listen, you can't find a co-founder. Yeah. It is not a job post which you can do. But you have been able to constantly find co-founders. So is there a place, what has been your strategy to find these people? Because they're all not in South Bombay, right? These are people from all over
It's
the
all
world.
Grace, Vishal. It's all God and Guru, yeah. Honestly,
God and Guru came much later, right? I'm talking of before all of that.
That's true. I think just meeting people who you feel are like-minded. We could have been co-founders, right? Perfect yin and yang.
Absolutely.
Tech guy, business guy.
Yep.
You love finesse and perfection. I love balance sheet and profit and loss.
You never know. Maybe we should do it later.
So now think of this, right? This is exactly how it works. We know each other. We know we have the same values. That's how people get together. So this happens, unfortunately, because we don't see it happening often in India. We think it's something magical,
And the funny thing was, people always somehow thought that we both are enemies and we don't like each other. I said, no, I don't know why people think that. So in India, people have this notion that if people are in the same business, they should hate each other. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, first of all, we are in the same business, but gaming is not like people are playing one game and then they don't play any other game in the world. And just because in the same business we don't need to hate each other. So this is the whole problem of the system here, right? Correct. People are like, if you are with Flipkart won't like Amazon and Paytm, and all these people hate each other. And so what are your thoughts around that?
So I think it's a lot of the media we consume. This is all from Bollywood, that, you've seen industrialists fight with each other and hate each other and burn each other's factories. It's a figment of imagination.
I remember the statements once made by Snapdeal against Flipkart on, all those things. It kind of sounded ridiculous.
Ugly. I think only the weak talk like that. But having said that, I think we all know that the industry should be tighter.
Yeah.
There's not enough sharing.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that there is, again, I don't want to use that word, but there is the Bombay Club equivalent for startups.
Correct.
While every other industry has been able to come together to work towards it, especially in the tech world, that has not happened.
That's true. And I think we're too busy building our own businesses. A lot of entrepreneurs have not got any, deep, meaningful exits. So there's always this deep, unfortunately, I wouldn't say inferiority, but feeling of non-fulfillment.
No, but there have been, Make My Trip, Rediff, Naukri. There have been enough and more cases where, a lot of money has been made.
Of course. But then I'm talking about, far more than what you can count on your finger, right? A lot more people have been, forget having started up something and sold it. There are so many people who've come back from the US, so many people who've done professional stuff. Why don't they share? Their companies don't forbid them from sharing best experiences.
But I think you did possibly, again, one of the most amazing things. And this, again, I think, if I remember, happened, late 2007-8 is Rodin-Hoods, like putting together. So the funny part was there was NASCOM doing things and there was TIE doing things. And here you were, as an individual, doing Rodin-Hood. So how did that crazy idea come about? And what is the secret behind Rodin-Hood's name?
So I was in this meditation class and I told my teacher that I didn't get a kick. I'm not getting a kick. I'm not getting a high anymore. And she said something very profound to me. She said, your cup is full, empty your cup. And I didn't understand anything. So I said, explain it. She said, because you've got everything you wanted, there's no thirst. So empty yourself and then you will get more. So the only thing I figured out what I could give was knowledge of what I'd done. So I began to blog, and it started as a blog called Rodin-Hood.com. It was very factual and very precise and very naked. I wrote a SHA document which lawyers called me and said, that's 11 lakhs of consultancy that you've just given away for free. So eventually what happened was it looked very singular to me, like not plural. So I made it Rodin Hoods. And thankfully, Vishal, at that time, there weren't too many of these, news portals, and now, by the dozen reporters who do everything on startups. We were the first to say, by the entrepreneur, for the entrepreneur.
And people used to come and pitch ideas, and you had these events. It's amazing.
So we started that off, and I'm very happy to know that, your stories and inks and all came much later, and they did a fabulous job. So basically, they institutionalized what was simply a thought.
Mm-hmm.
And they said,
and I remember there was this time when your posts were about single malt whiskies, and then suddenly they became about you giving people out autobiography of a yogi.
Yeah.
So what happened? What happened to those single malt whiskies, and how did those whiskies convert into these books?
It's amazing. That's a goosebumpy moment for me. You defined it so well. So we, I think in all our lives we have some deeply.
So which was your favorite whiskey, by the way?
So I used to have Balvenie, I used to have, Valentine 21.
And I remember those posts where people were like going crazy on your on your single malts.
Oh God, don't remind me. But there was this moment in my life where, I think spirituality finally sunk in. And there was a visit to the cave. We go to this cave, my wife and I, in the Himalayas, which had a big impact.
No, but was this, you used to go there before, or you just started now? Or?
To be very honestly, honest, Vishal, I never did. I started drinking when I was 32.
Oh, okay.
So I was very old, and we have a common friend between us, Jay Zaveri, who used to do club greetings.
Yeah.
He's the guy who took me to a pub in London and said, here's your first drink. So I wasn't like an 18-year-old guy who drank beer and rum and coke.
And he was with Social Capital, and now he's doing something else, right? He's moved out of Social Capital.
I'm not sure. I thought he was still with Social Capital.
No, Social Capital had some falling
internal
out.
Problems, right. So I was a very late drinker. The funny thing was my dad became very excited that I was drinking. So he encouraged me to drink all these malts. But I was always resenting it.
And your dad used to drink them, I presume.
Oh yeah, he'll drink. Yeah. So when I quit drinking, the first guy I called was my dad and said, Dad, I got all this beautiful product. And he said, send it right over, man. But having said that, I think my wife and I were always spiritual. And as we kept going deeper and deeper on the path, a lot of things vanished. And especially the alcohol. And I'm writing my second book in which I share only my miracles, spiritual miracles. And this part of the alcohol going away is a phenomenal story, which I hope...
I mean, it's amazing, your family, right? I mean, your great-grandfather was the inventor of the Kejriwal, the famous eggs Kejriwal, right? And guys, I know there are many restaurants which serve it, but in Mumbai, one of the best places to have it is Bombay Canteen. Bombay Canteen has done a very, very good version of it.
Well, lovely, okay.
So have you been to Bombay Canteen yet?
I've not been to Bombay Canteen. I don't eat eggs. I never ate eggs.
Oh, you never ate eggs?
I never ate eggs.
Even now?
Absolutely not. I mean, no eggs at all.
Wow.
So I'm a Kejriwal who doesn't eat eggs Kejriwal.
Wow. That's amazing. So then why whiskey and no eggs? What
I don't know. I think it was just that it was just the influence of a very close friend, and then the fact
And was it because of you being a Marwadi, or is it just because you didn't like eggs, or what happened?
Yeah, I never got exposed to eggs. We never ate eggs in our house. We never had like non-vegetarian, there's nothing like that, right? So you get exposed to what you get as a child.
Okay.
And then if you're in dorms and colleges, then you do, my bag. We talked about how I was brought up.
Yeah.
So the alcohol just happened because of Jay and a few other people. And then I think I have one of my weakness is that I am an addictive kind of guy. So I became a wine drinker. And then I did 3 levels of sommelier training because I learned how to pair wine with food.
Wow.
And it became so deep in the knowledge of wine. I could do blind readings with red and white. I could tell you soil and not year, but definitely the grape.
Wow.
So having said that, as we started going deeper and deeper into the spiritual path, the alcohol would conflict with my day-to-day living. I would get headaches, I would get, amnesia, and I could see it was rebelling in my system. And then it just went away.
No, but why is the spiritual path, right? I mean, normally in India, the impression is that once you are 60, 70 is when you worry about all these things, right? I mean, you are still peak in your business, you're doing well. This is not the time to take up spirituality.
And which is right. In the scriptures, 0 to 25 is when you study. 25 to 50 is when you become grahast, fully
Grahast ashram, yeah.
Grahast, yeah. And then 50 to 75 is when you wean off. And 75 is when you become a recluse.
Ooh.
That's a standard prescription in the Puranas. That's what most Hindus have to do. But I think spirituality is not a timetable. You don't decide when to board that flight. I feel it's very karmic. I think it's very, very deeply inherited. And now full circle, my grandparents who I lived with, I think I chose them and they chose me because of the spiritual inclination, not for any other reason. So a lot of that came into my life as I began to get older, as we went through our successes and misses. And then the why began to haunt.
No, but, as it said, the monk who sold his Ferrari was made because you first had to get your Ferrari. So you got all the money, you sold, the whole China episode happened. And now you had all the money, you said, what do I do? So then you took up spirituality.
No, not at all. The greed and the desire to make money has only got bigger and bigger.
Okay, aisa nahi hai that suddenly because you have taken up spirituality, you are like, I don't want to make money.
So it's very funny, Vishal. I bought a Mercedes some time back and I sent a mail to the CEO of India saying, I'm the monk who bought a Mercedes. So can I get a discount? And he actually gave me a discount just because of that line. Okay. I said, if I'll blog sitting on it in a meditative posture saying monks buy Mercedes, don't sell it. But having said that, I think, I don't think you can time it. It's like your health fetish or your health fitness. When I met you, you're a roly-poly guy, you were eating all that stuff. What happened, I don't know, but something happened. So we all have epiphanies in our lives. We have turning points in our lives. And in my case, it was very gradual. It crept up on me. Again, by God's grace, my life partner, Chavi, my wife, I have no clue where she came from, man. I mean, a Delhi girl, I was never supposed to marry, some arranged marriage from Delhi. And now, so, lo and behold, she turns out to be more spiritually inclined than I am.
Wow.
So it's very karmic.
No, but again, saying karmic is different. But at one end, you are PNL. On the other end, you are doing games. All these things don't add up to spirituality, which is no logic, no PNL, no entertainment.
Excellent.
It is the complete opposite of you.
So this is where,
because PNL is all about logic, right?
Yeah, and it's
it has to make their hand. I need a return.
And it's gain.
I need a return.
Accumulation. And this is about letting go, right?
Exactly. There's no return in spirituality.
So I think this is where...
The return is in next life, maybe. That's what you're hoping.
No. The return has to be right here and right now. There should be no next life. That is the return, right? But having said that, I think the closet spiritual seeker, which we have not seen or heard of, but the Steve Jobs, the Warren Buffetts, they've always lived this beautiful life of execution at one level, introspection at the personal level. So what we do in our day-to-day life is play a role of businessman, CEO, husband, wife. But at our internal level, the role you play is what you choose. And that therefore is no dualism.
Yeah. And I think the interesting thing which I look at spirituality, and one of the reasons that I chose, or I'm trying to, I'm nowhere close to you, is 70% of all the top achievers in the world. Top. I mean, you name it in any field. I'm not talking of businessmen. I'm talking of businessmen, sportsmen, teachers, Nobel Prize winners. One common thing, they all were spiritual or did meditation or mindfulness. So out of all the traits which people try to adopt of all these people, and the one thing which everybody listening must do or must seek is this. And I think that is one of the reasons which started my journey in looking into this.
So it's brilliant, yeah.
So that was my logic of doing this.
Right.
So what is your logic of doing this?
No, I think for me it was not a logic. It was just something that, I was a spiritual hippie. Let me use the right word. Since I was 14. So let me give you a little flashback there. I have visited every guru, every baba, every mandir, every soothsayer you can think of. I have not gone to the Kumbh like you have, but I've done everything else. And
I'll tell you my Kumbh story also.
Sure.
Yeah.
And for years and years, I went to the oddest, to the bestest, to the weirdest people looking for something, and I never knew what. So I don't think this was a chance that came my way. And when I got introduced to the meditation I do, I finally figured out that this was meant for me. So it was just finally figuring out what I was looking for versus just suddenly converting into something.
But why this one book which you always talk about, Autobiography of a Yogi? What happened in that? What is in that book?
So the book is a very interesting, it's a novel, it's a story. I would say 90% of people who read it, even if I tell them to read it with sincerity, will read it with complete utter disbelief. All the stories there seem very nonsensical.
And you have given up like some 5,000 of these books,
Lots
right?
of them, yeah. It's what Steve Jobs called his only book that he read. In his autobiography, it's mentioned, Isaacson has mentioned that this is the only book Steve Jobs read every year on his iPad. Now, that's not a reason to buy the book or to keep the book. But the book is a great testimony.
And now Virat Kohli is also reading it.
Yeah, he reads it, right. But the book is a great testimony to belief. So for anything else, Vishal, it's not about spirituality, it's not about a Baba, it's not about a yogi. It is life with belief. If you can enter life and believe things, hope for things and try to do things, it becomes magical. So it's an expression of what life can be, irrespective of whether you believe any of the stories. So to me, no book explains a philosophy of life better rather than this one.
But reading a book and getting inspired is one. Why were you distributing this to thousands of people?
Because everybody has a thirst and everybody needs something to experiment with. Anyway, the culture of reading is not very prevalent in our generation. I have read much more than I don't think my daughters will ever read in their entire lives and their children's lives. So why not a book? Why not a book that, might do some magic? And by the way, this book has a little bit of a magic associated with it. I mean, a lot of people receive the book not to ever read it, but to give it to someone else who it was intended for.
Oh, okay.
So this has happened to me many times. People have said, oh, I wasn't getting the book, but someone gave it to me, which happened to come from you. So it's a beautiful gift. It's a very nice kind of, a signature that, hey, have some spirituality in your life.
But, having a book and following, that kind of spiritualism is different. But then you got very strongly associated with Shri Shri.
Yes.
So how did that linkage happen?
So the book is only a spiritual...
these are, I presume, these are two different...
They're very different. Kriya Yoga is very different. It is in the past, many years ago. But it's a beacon. It's a lighthouse. And Shri Shri is a living master for me and for a lot of millions of people. He teaches contemporary meditation techniques that can be applied to today's age. He's 60, 63, 65. So he's like us, like me. He's old, but he's not that old. He's not a Baba that you can't talk to. And his practices are very simple. So when you become a spiritual seeker, which this book did to me, then I began to seek the best practice. And he happened to be the best practitioner. And then we went very deep into it. So I've been in Art of Living for 20 years now.
20 years?
Yeah, the year we met is when I did my first course.
Wow.
And we enjoyed it so much, my wife and I, that we became teachers. And now we do courses every alternate month, every 45 days in South Bombay.
And what is I don't know the difference, but, now there is Sadguru is there, and there is Shri Shri, and then there are these, for a normal person, getting into spirituality is so confusing, right? It's like buying a brand of cola, right? There's Pepsi, there is Coke, there is this, there is that. How does one choose all this?
So one chooses by figuring out. There's always a connection. Sadhguru is very enticing. He's very modern, contemporary. He's the guy with the motorbike, talks in a very nice way, inner engineering, and it's very beautifully explains his stuff. She is more on the belief side and the Indian Hindu, philosophical side. No matter who you choose, as long as you get a dose of spirituality in your lives.
No, just like VCs, right? You have figured out this vulture capital, vapor capital. Do you have some theory about how do you choose this spirituality? Because a lot of people have also gone into a lot of problems because of all these gurus, right? I mean, while I'm not saying anything about Shri Shri, but there are many such stories.
Yeah, and I think it's someone that a living master is always better than someone who existed and who you can't reach out to. And very clearly you can make out the frauds from the real people. I mean, they talk a language and they preach a certain practice which you and I can understand. If you're intelligent, you know exactly who's who. So if they are about your money or if they are about your seva and other weirdo stuff, then you drop them like a bombshell and you move on. But it's like anything else in life, right? I mean, it's like an employee. You hire each other with the best intention, but if a karma doesn't meet, you move on.
No, and I think that's the interesting part about spirituality. And I get these lines that, hey, Vishal, you talk about wearable technology and latest health, and then you go to Kumbh Mela. How does it add up? And my point to them was that why do you think science and spirituality are clashing? They should not be clashing with each other. Spirituality is just that science does not have explanation to this yet.
So well said.
Yet. Science cannot explain this. That doesn't mean it is not true.
Perfect. So well explained.
And my point to them was that every time I go to Silicon Valley, people are like, hey, are you going to Burning Man? I said, what is Burning Man? They said, Burning Man is this place where people go in the middle of the desert and do nothing, and they are just, smoking grass and, looking at the sky. I said, this is what is Kumbh Mela. So suddenly when, Elon Musk and the Google CEOs are going to Burning Man, that's considered high tech and latest, but going to Kumbh Mela is not. So my point was, I'm not going to go to Burning Man. I'm going to go to the great, great, great grandfather of Burning Man, which is the Kumbh Mela.
So well said, yeah.
And I think each of us, all the Indians and any of the techies listening to this, that if you really want to experience 10,000 years of culture and spirituality and power, and that's the place to go. It is unbelievable. I mean, what I've seen there can't be described.
I'm so amazed, man. I don't know why I've denied myself that opportunity, but I will.
I think even when I was going, my wife told me, don't take your wallet. I said, no, don't take your wallet, it'll get stolen. So I had to take... And believe me, there was nothing like this. It was one of the best. I mean, again, thanks to Modi ji this time, it was organized really well. And our memory of Kumbh Mela is that people get lost there. Yeah. That is what has got ingrained in your minds. Believe me, nothing can get lost there. You can only gain gain and gain. So next time we should go to Kumbh Mela together.
Absolutely.
But talking of Kumbh Mela, you have now gone to so many caves, man. So what is you with caves? Like Batman. So Alok is going to caves too, right? The Rodin-Hood cave.
No, there's this cave in the autobiography of a yogi, which has been defined as the place where a lot of changes began to happen in the lives of the people mentioned in the book. And that cave exists, and that cave has been located, and the cave is now a shrine. And it's Babaji's cave, which is the central saint in the book of autobiography of a yogi. Mm-hmm. So obviously people who are followers of the book and followers of spirituality go to the cave. The cave is just one part of the pilgrimage. It's the starting of the journey to the cave, to sitting there, to coming out of it and coming back. And the whole pilgrimage is, the whole experience of saying, I am doing things to go deeper in the path. So it's like a trip to the Mecca. Doesn't just meet going there. It's the trip from starting to end, or any pilgrimages that we all do. But the cave is very beautiful. It's above Ranikhet. It's in a Dronagiri mountain range. There's a lot of history behind that mountain range. It's where the Pandavas were. It's where at one time Hanuman flying had a rock fall off from his mountain and it landed there. Blah blah. Wow. So a lot of mythology, mystical, and it's a cave. And you sit there inside. It's well kept. So it's not something, no scorpion's going to eat you there, like Kumbh Mela. And then you come back and it just becomes a routine. So we've gone there for 9 years now, every year. And hopefully we'll keep going there as long as our legs carry us.
The Vishal Gondal Show will be right back after this break.
Hey, this is Shudaditya.
And I'm Amit Doshi.
And we host E01.
It's a really fun podcast where we talk to some of the best entrepreneurs in the country.
Yes, talking about everything from their startup challenges to what they're building and all the future of technologies right here.
So catch us on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you listen to your podcast from.
Also, at one end, so there's the entire spiritual side of Alok, which everybody now knows. But there is also this extremely controversial side of you, right? So you have strong opinions, which you talk about. I know you have hated and talked about Flipkarts a lot of times. You've had wars with people on Twitter and all of that. So how can your spiritual slide explain your I don't know what side you want to call that, but that other side of you, which is the angry young man?
It's not the angry young man. I think in India we don't have people who speak their mind. We're very subservient to what people say and think. In the Flipkart case, I was the guy who said going only app was the most stupid thing I ever thought of.
Myntra did that first, right? Yeah.
And we all know what that cost whom their job to begin with, right? I mean, the whole meltdown came from that incident. Now, the point I'm making, Vishal, is if a leader does something like that and everybody claps and says, wow, wow, you have no clue how many more people get influenced to do that and how many more people did that and actually got burnt alive, because you can't go back from app only to web and app without having big balance sheets again. So you need contrarians and you need people who say bullshit. You might be whoever you are, but this is not making any economic sense.
But doesn't it make you look like, and I'm sorry to use that word, a little bit egoistic?
Not egoistic. It makes you feel like you're two things. Either you've got an inferiority or you're jealous, or you're too old school or old world. So either you're dumb, which is you don't have the knowledge, and you're jealous. So either 1, 2 or 3 put together.
So people who are reading your opinions should take it in what way?
The way they think so. So the haters say this guy is jealous. The haters say, he's too old. He never made a mark. So he's saying all this because he needs to be heard. There are some people who now, I'll give you an example, Vishal. This is very personal to me. I wrote an article in the ET which said why Arvind Kejriwal makes me yawn. It was one of the most hated articles, even more than the Flipkarts and everybody. I have so many people even today who say, for 5 years we hated you, we blocked you, but now we want to talk to you because we were let down. Now, this is not a boast about being right. I could not have been right. I was wrong in the case of Flipkart. They did a phenomenal job for themselves. We'll talk about the capital later.
Yeah.
But the point is they did it. And we thought it can't be done that way. So great. Someone proved themselves and someone had a view which also got proven yes or no. The mobile app thing didn't work out. And that's very, very publicly acknowledged. So I don't write for what people think. I write for what I think.
And I think that's part of the problem here, right? Because most people don't do this. So the people who do this are suddenly considered, oh, you are egoistic or you are this or you are angry or whatever.
Correct.
So how do you deal with all these haters?
So the point is exactly this point, that if you watch, it's the intent. Again, going back to why. Let's just tell you 30 seconds, Vishal. My biggest meditation in my life is why. Not the where, not the what, not the who, not the when. The most confusing and hardest question is why. Why do I write? Because I have a view and I think it will be valuable to someone. So when housing.com did hoardings of the same creative...
You took pictures and you had put it everywhere.
Yeah, and I asked a question. I said, why, in media buying, there's a simple principle, right? OTS is opportunity to see and frequency cap is how often. If I put if, for example, let's educate our viewers. For all the TV serials or soap operas, they always face evening traffic because you go home and switch it on. You don't see TV soap operas in the morning.
Office, yeah.
You do action when you go to the office, you do action when you go home. So there were hoardings of the same creative, which is one word called housing.com, both morning and evening, and they were next to each other. So my question was, why is this?
And I know that guy had come on Facebook and written all kinds of nonsense.
No, he mutilated my Wikipedia page and all. That's all fine.
Yeah.
But the point is, he reacted in that way. A lot of people ask themselves that, hey, you know what? VCs may not always be right. They're giving money to people, but that person is doing things that is not making sense. And a little bit of meltdown happened from that point onwards. So entrepreneurs, just because you raise money doesn't mean you're great,
smart,
right?
Yeah.
So someone has to always ask why. And sometimes that's not looked favorably upon. But I don't give a damn.
No, and that's the best thing I like about you, right? That you have not changed. I think people always think that, that suddenly now Alok will not write all these things and Alok will not have an opinion. But like I just read your post about what's happening with Mindtree and L&T. I think again you're among the few people who have put an opinion. None of the other people have even spoken about it.
And Naresh Goyal, when I airline, we both loved and we all love. And
I posted, I'm willing to sell my jet miles for half the price.
That's it.
But it's so sad, right? I mean, Jet, again, a company which, I could not think this is what's going to happen to them, but it's really sad.
So it's a warning, right, Vishal? Anything can happen to all of us if we move our eye from the ball.
Absolutely. I think in Jet's case, it's gone to another level. But coming back to your case and not Jet here, how do you deal with all the hate?
I'm objective. So it's a spiritual.
So do you block these people? How do you handle it?
No, not at all. So there is a three. It's an old. It's a spiritual adage that we have. First you educate, then you ignore. Simple one line. First you listen. It's very hard to listen to a critic because your mind tells you don't listen. If it's like
in fact, the maximum learning can come from the person who criticizes you.
So listening and reading very, very acrimonious feedback is very hard. But you get nuggets sometimes from what they say, and they're right sometimes. Then you retort and say, this is what I meant. Either the person acknowledges or sends something even worse back, which is then emotional. It is not logical. Logic has gone. Yeah. Now it's a vent against me, against you. So you ignore. And if the person becomes messy and starts pinging everybody on the wall, and then you block the guy. But as long as you don't think of it as something personal but on a view, it's what we call in spirituality being a witness and being engaged. I put out a post. I am witnessing that post as a writer. It is not me. And the post has its own life. So let it do its job.
So how has your spiritual journey made you a better businessman?
I think three things. One is creativity completely blows up when you meditate every day. Because the first thing that begins to change are your mind cells. And your left and right brain don't have those divisions anymore. So, you're as creative and clinical at the same time. The second thing is, I haven't been able to develop it yet. But if you look at Satya Nadella, who's I think a born empathetic leader, somewhere down the line you begin to understand what empathy means. But the most important thing is the ability to accept grace and gratitude. Every minute, if you can say this is only a product of grace, and I am nobody without grace and gratitude, which sounds like a voodoo, oh my God, fatalistic thing. But yeah, that's what it is. I don't see why I am here sitting with you when there are so many better and harder and luckier people who never made it. So there is some reason to be thankful. And the more you search for those reasons, the more thankfulness comes in your life.
And so what is your advice for people who have taken up spirituality, but then they say, because I'm doing spirituality, I cannot do business? Because a lot of times people think that going into spirituality is like you're coming to the end. That's how it is perceived as, right? That abhi sab khatam ho gaya, abhi main ye sab chhod ke I'm going to go and sit in a cave.
Right. That's the most dangerous thing, Vishal. I mean, it's in India, spirituality is the greatest escapism you can ever find. So instead of getting onto drugs and alcohol, people just take this garb of white and orange and then vanish.
Yeah, the Ranbaxy brothers. So they have literally taken the money and vanished.
So the thing is that the greatest yogi is one who stays established. There's a Sanskrit shloka called Yogastha Kuru Karmani, which is be established in yoga. Don't run away from yoga. So if you are established in the world with your principles and then execute, then you are the true yogi. Not some guy in the Himalayas who's living on fresh air and free food.
So do you have a spiritual PNL?
Yeah, very much.
So how does that look like?
So it is only about giving. And the more you give without expectation. So here the balance sheet doesn't have any liability. It's only got assets. It's just a very odd looking balance sheet. The PNL is very simple.
And what is an example of giving? How do you give?
Like when you share knowledge, when you share all...
It's not about donating money. That's not...
It could be, but it's your form of giving. I think knowledge is a higher form of giving because it helps people long term. I'll just give you another example. If you look at joy, we keep calling it the quality of joy. So if I may be a little detailed, if you watch a movie or eat a great meal, that joy lasts for a few minutes, hours. You get drunk, it's for a few hours or so. But in a deep meditation sadhana, it lasts for maybe a day. You run, or you do exercise, or you work out. I mean, imagine your Mount Everest thing. That experience has lasted with you, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is...
I can literally close my eyes and imagining myself back on Mount Everest.
So that is quality of meditation.
Yeah.
Because it's an experience whose happiness is lasting. So coming back here, the idea is if you give things like knowledge, people will be happier than what you gave them like a free drink or a beer.
No, and clearly, right, I mean, I see the quality of your posts, right? See, people post things, a lot of people write quotes and other things, but every post, when you talk about, like recently you talked about employee and this whole
Feedback,
thing of how to give feedback, it was not a post, it was a lesson. That one thing is a management lesson which people spend years in the stupid MBA school. You just covered that in one lesson. So how much time do you spend making these kind of things? How is it like intuitive? You wake up and you're like, okay, I've just done this post.
No, so I post at between 1:30 and 2:30 in the afternoon after lunch. And it comes right then and there. So it takes about...
So aisa nahi hai that you have a research team who's thinking about this and then they're sending you... I'm just... A lot of people think that, right? A lot of people think that Alok has this team of people sitting in this dark rooms thinking of these ideas and sending it to you.
I just read a lot, Vishal. I mean, that's something I think we don't share in common. Or I don't know whether you've changed
I'm
or not.
not into reading as much.
So I made a commitment to review a book every week on Sunday afternoon.
Wow.
And now I'm forced by that commitment to read every week a book. And I read about 7 or 8 magazines and newspapers every day.
8 magazines or newspapers every day?
Yeah.
Wow.
So FT, Wall Street Journal, NYT,
I know The Economist. You post a lot from there.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And then the ET.
You wouldn't believe I've never ever read The Economist. I can't read. That's just too heavy. I will not follow it only.
So beautiful. And then the HBR. And then all this knowledge comes because you read. And then you can just join the dots together.
Yeah. So my hack to do that, by the way, is I go to TED every year.
Perfect.
And I meet all the people who write these books and write these articles and I hang out with them.
It's perfect.
And that's how I probably get the knowledge from them.
Great.
So that's possibly how I get it. But so the funny thing is that, most of the books you have written about, I may have met those authors.
I'm sure you have.
That's how I'm hacking this.
And as long as you get your dose as often as you do, it's good.
So one thing which I learned, and I'm trying to incorporate this, and people hearing this should kind of figure out, is there is this thing called latency. So if you can get latency from thought to action, you have made it. Okay. And the latency ka concept is simple. They say that, whenever you get angry, you blow your top off, or whatever you do, it happens in a split second, which you can't control. And if you can create that one or even a 0.1 second latency from thought to action on your own, you can achieve the impossible.
Amazing.
And I think in your case, you have that latency somehow, because every time you write something, you'll come up with all these amazing ideas, because the latency also helps you choose the right idea, because you can't just wake up and write an article one day.
Yeah, I mean, it's training, but I think what I've trained to do is I've trained to write every day. And like you train to exercise and run and be fit, writing, thinking, being creative. There's a very big fallacy, Vishal, that, I'm a creative guy, so I need, that environment and cigarettes and rubbish. You can be creative in a jail if you need to. So I think what you do on a daily basis with the discipline of what you should do makes you an expert at it.
So, Alok, you are just 50 odd years, you're very, very young, you have your whole life ahead. So are you going to start your own spiritual movement with Alok as the leader?
Oh God.
Is that where things are going?
No, Vishal.
Well, I'm going to join there. If that's the case, you have the first disciple.
I think we should do a company together. That's a better plan.
Yeah, that's a better
plan. I'm very excited at Games to Win now. I think, the years I've worked, gaming in our way.
And I'm back in gaming, by the way. I'm investing, yeah.
That's great. So I'm very, very excited. I think this company will go public, or it'll be a very beautiful outcome. If nothing else, we'll become fabulously rich, all of us. I love what I do. And there's a very beautiful equation now in my life, right? Spirituality, teaching and gaming.
And writing books.
And writing books. I have 2 on the way in the next 3 to 4 years.
You should now do a Netflix series, man, I'm telling you.
As it happens right now, let's just be close to ground.
We have told it to the universe, so you never know.
That's right. That's
you have to say things to the universe for it to happen.
And
so even Amazon Prime is okay, but Netflix is better.
But I think just living a life by example, Vishal, we both and so many else who are influencers are watched and read and listened to so much, like this show. Everything you do has an impact on someone. So I think the more attentive we become about that, the more we help others. So everything you say, everything you do, every action or inaction is now impacting hundreds and millions of people. I think that itself is a pursuit of a lifetime. Just conducting yourself.
So Games to Win is going to public 3, 4, 5, 10 years. After that, what?
बहुत लंबी उम्र है यार. I mean, I think we'll both, inshallah, we'll start a company together after a few years. I think, I don't know.
So if Rodin-Hood was a religion, or if it was a movement, okay, I'm going to call it a religion is a different thing. If Rodin-Hood was like art of living, what will be the top 5 principles of that?
The first principle would be an entrepreneur for a day. You have to get out on the road and do something entrepreneurial.
Sell something to someone.
Earn something on your own. The second would be helpful. So help someone all day long. That one day of help will be enough karma for your life. The third would be thinkful, if there's a word like that. We don't think at all anymore, Vishal. What you talked about, such a deep, what you did was went 100 miles below the surface and came back by latency.
Latency in thought.
That's it. But boss, what you're saying is think and put some mind behind it, right?
And unfortunately, in the technical world, latency is bad.
Is bad.
We want
exactly.
to remove latency.
Exactly. That's what Stadia is doing, right? With Google.
Yeah,
they're taking latency away. So the third is thinkfulness or thinking. I think the fourth is gratefulness, right? This is why spiritual retreats are very important. I just did a 3.5-day silence program where you don't even look at someone. You look at the floor and you walk. And then you realize how grateful you are that you have feet to walk. So being grateful. And I think fifth is just following passion. Yeah. A lot of our parents, we are very fortunate that we let our kids do what we want. But there's so many people whose parents have pushed them into some dark corner of their lives and they don't know what to do with their children. Even today, if a kid comes and tells his father at 21 that I'm going to become a rapper, I think he'll give a thappad he'll give him.
Yeah. So how does one find passion in life?
You don't find it. It's there, but you ignore it. A lot of people think that I like this, but it cannot become a passion. Like you became a tech genius at 16. I still remember, you won't remember, but we had gone to an Intel open session at the Oberoi, at the top of the Oberoi. And this guy called out a question and then you answered it. And then this guy looked at you and didn't know who the hell you were. This was pre-contest to it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I think you must have been 18 or 19 at that time. Now you did it because you were passionate. No one was giving you money and you didn't care who was in the room.
Yeah.
So you followed it to the T. So many people don't follow that. I have a friend who's saying, Alok, my son is a great chess player, but I can't let his studies get ruined. So I don't know whether to do. Now he's making decisions for that boy. I hope he makes the right decision. Parents or children or us, I don't believe there's anyone who's not passionate about something. The only problem is we keep on suppressing it.
So you discovered spirituality much later in life. But do you think kids can take up spirituality? How can, you have daughters and, I have sons, but if I ask them to meditate, that's not going to happen. How do you think kids can do this?
I think the format is absolutely different. Look at the innocence of our children. If you ask them about green, they are very passionate about going green. They're very passionate about non-wasting.
Yeah.
I think they are much more polite than we ever were.
Absolutely.
So they are meditative. The question is what makes them happy. So they might say, helping people is a great thing. I challenge you, Vishal, you tell your kids, meditate for half a day and I'll give you all the gadgets in the world, or help someone in this camp for a day and I'll also take away something from you. They'll opt for the second one. So it's only about finding their interest because they are born meditative.
So between all these years, have you figured out any life hacks which have improved your productivity or got something?
We spoke about a lot of them, but let me summarize. So one is definitely reading. For me, reading is the greatest life hack ever because you have no clue the power of knowledge and how.
So you read how much a day and how much in a day? Like 8 newspapers and 4 magazines.
It's fast, so about 2 hours a day.
You read 2 hours a day. Okay.
Yeah, and I read a lot of spiritual stuff also.
And then you meditate for how long?
About 2 hours a day.
wow, 4 hours a day is between reading and meditating.
Yeah.
So reading and then absorbing all that material in
Yeah.
your soul.
Correct. So reading is a great hack. I think meditation, you just said it is a great hack, and we all agree that something is, important. Again, reiterating, sharing. Making sharing and giving a part of the daily routine. It's not some Sunday afternoon nap that you take. It should be a daily task.
And how do you do gratitude? You talked about gratitude also, right?
So
how does
beautiful.
one...
It just best is to do a timetable. So it's when I sleep on my pillow in the night, I take 6-7 minutes to gratitude. I think of all that has happened in the day and I'm grateful for it. Good, bad and ugly. Mother in Aurobindo ashram. So Aurobindo had a spiritual partner called Mother. When you go to Pondicherry, you'll see her all over the place. And Mother was asked once by a student that, Mother, nothing is happening in my life. It's so dull. Kuch nahi hota hai. And she said, don't you understand, child, that's the biggest blessing. That you have not fallen down, you have not become sick. Nothing happening is a great blessing. So just be blessed, feel grateful for the day. As bad as it was or as good as it was, because it's an experience. So you feel grateful, and that's a great hack.
So apart from alcohol, what are the other things you have given up in life? I presume you have given up alcohol.
Yeah. Alcohol has given me up.
Okay.
I've written a very nice blog I'll share with you personally on how you can make smoking and alcohol give you up rather than you give them
because
up.
The problem right now is people are getting addicted to smoking, alcohol, and even now drugs and all these things. People are addicted to Facebook, PUBG. People are getting addicted to everything right now.
So addiction is an inherent human trait. The question is hopefully for better things than worse. I think that at the physical level, these are the two alcohols. I never had a non-veg. I never had.
Yeah, so you never had to give up non-veg.
Yeah, I was lucky. I'm trying very hard to give up on my temper and my, anxiousness to make people do and think like I can, but I'm not successful.
And are there things which you will never give up?
I'll never give up the pursuit of money for sure. It's so embedded in my life.
Well, the PNL man is here.
I'll never give that up. I'll never give up working.
So is there like a limit on the money? Have you ever thought about that? Or it's like...
It's never about the money, na? It's about the pursuit of money. It's about the pursuit of value. Money to theek hai,
so there is no upper limit to it.
I mean, it's okay.
It's not like 100 million or 101 billion or 10 billion. But
Vishal, we never started with money in our mind. We'll
exactly.
never end with money in our mind.
Exactly.
We never did what we did with money. Others we'd have burned, how bankers burn out. You and I are not burnt out. We're not lying in some rehab.
Yeah.
That's the pursuit.
So money is like a goal post which keeps usko aage karte rehte.
Correct. It's a leaderboard, yeah. Kabhi hota hai, kabhi nahi hota. It's okay. So, but I think... creating value or creating business is a must do.
So apart from autobiography of a yogi, which are the other 3 books you would recommend somebody?
So I read this book called Principles by Ray Dalio.
By the way, I've met Ray Dalio many times.
Oh my God. What are you saying,
He's a
man?
What are you saying? So that's what I said, right? So
you're killing me, man.
So I have met him now. I meet him every year. So now also I'm going to meet him in TED next month in Vancouver. Amazing guy to hang out with.
So please tell him, like, you have a guy in India. I mean, he has many, but I'm a big fan.
This is a great example. So I knew him before he wrote the book or before the book came out. So I've been hanging out with him. Yeah.
Lovely. So
amazing principles. That's an amazing. That's one book I have glanced.
Please read slowly, dhire dhire. There's a spiritual book called Voice of Babaji, which is again from the lineage of autobiography yogi. It was dictated live by Babaji in Chennai in 2 houses. So my wife and I go to those houses and we meditate there.
Wow.
It was an ad verbatim book which you only read to realize it cannot be human because the verses there are not human.
Wow. So you know Sanskrit and stuff like that?
Yeah, now by the way, I'm now almost a Guru Puja Pandit. So I can recite a whole 10-minute puja in pure Sanskrit.
Oh man. 10-minute puja in Sanskrit.
So,
that's like some deadly level unlocked, huh?
It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, Vishal. Because from Bombay when we grew up learning Marathi in school little bit.
Can you give a 30 seconds of this Sanskrit thing?
I mean...
not 10 minutes, yeah?
Yadvari nikhila nilimpa parishad siddhim vidhatti nisham. So this is like, Guruji said this publicly. It's a Sanskrit line which says, when you reach the house of your Guru, all the gods are waiting at his doorstep to give you siddhis.
Wow, that's amazing.
So,
So Ray Dalio principles, of course, Babaji's book, and any other third book?
and I think autobiography, and I keep coming
No,
back to
that-
That's
that-
already done.
that's
so
already
the
done.
new book that is fascinating me is OKRs, because I think
Again, our
John Doe.
I've met
that's
him, like,
unbelievable.
he's again a TEDster. He gave his TED talk also on
Yeah,
the same
so I'm
thing.
now getting obsessed by OKRs because I've never seen such rarefied or clarified.
Such a simple thing, right? Nobody thinks about it, right?
So
It's such a simple
so
concept.
powerful, like it's bullets in one
Yeah.
book, right?
Have you, by the way, seen Ray Dalio's episodes? He's kind of made graphical comic on YouTube. So
Really?
his entire book, and that's what I have seen, is made into like these 10-minute comical episodes because
Okay.
he wanted it to like go
Distribute,
everywhere.
right? I've not seen it.
So he's done that really well.
I'll check it out.
What is the one thing you want yourself to be remembered of?
I find that very. I don't understand the It's life is not to be remembered.
Like Babaji is remembered even now.
But we don't know whether that's some memory of today or tomorrow. So if you look at 200-300 years ago, who cares who was? It's just one of those figments of imagination. I have no such desire. Just to live a good life is all I need to. It's always thinking about the future, no? Or the past. Chhod de yaar, abhi jeete hain na.
So, there was one yogi who became the chief minister of Uttar Pradesh. So, if you were, again, not chief minister, you are prime minister of India, what will you do? What will be the 5 things you will change in India?
The first thing I'll say is that if you're an entrepreneur, whatever you make for the rest of your life will be tax-free.
Okay.
So that's completely tax-free environment. The second thing I'll tell is all the mothers and all the ladies of the household to take their gold and sell it and to put 50% of that money into mutual funds. It's the worst ever country.
Investment,
it's just lying locked, right? I think the third thing I would do is like, give most corporates a 25% rebate on corporate income tax if they took 25% of profits and just created, we designate an LP to look after those funds and just contribute to venture capital. So venture capital is too much the privilege of the few. Why would a Harvard and Wharton and those LPs have venture capital? Basically democratize the supply of venture capital. And it's already sitting in our country.
Absolutely.
But the incentive is not there. So incentivize creating venture capital.
So if you were given 100 crores in marketing to promote spirituality, what will be the message be and how will you spend that?
I think very simply, right? Just to give away 5 or 6 minutes exercise or a simple task of what to do, sit and observe your breath.
No, what I meant is that will you put up hoardings everywhere?
Oh, it's a marketing plan.
What will be your marketing plan?
The marketing plan will not be on media, boss. It'll be on product development. It'll be on apps and it'll be creating things that become viral rather than, blowing it up on... Marketing is a waste of money, yeah? I never understood marketing, you know that. Yeah. So the question stalls me because I can't think of spending $1 on marketing. And for something so beautifully viral like spirituality, it would be an utter way. It would violate the principle of spirituality by being marketed.
But if you look at now what Patanjali has done, right, that's complete marketing. I mean, they are like the biggest advertiser in India now.
Yeah, but that's not spirituality. That's selling toothpaste and chaddi and banyan and whatever. Who cares about that? If you look at spirituality, for example, Bikram yoga, which look at Iyengar yoga, never marketed. If you look at the yogi postures, never marketed. If you look at Neem Karoli Baba, where Steve Jobs wed and Zuckerberg wed, they've never put out an ad. So I think the most purest things in life never are marketed. They just get discovered.
Do you see movies? Any favorite movies?
Lots of them, but all Netflix, man. I'm like, I devour Netflix.
So you're not the...
I have not been to a theatre for the last 5-6 years now. I think the day Netflix came is when I stopped going to the theatre. It's too much of a waste of time.
Absolutely. So I think, Alok, it's been a fascinating discussion. I know we can go for hours already. I just realized that we've already gone to almost 1 hour 47.
I can't believe it. Vishal, I can't believe it.
It just went
really.
on and on.
Wow.
But you know what? I'm going to get you back on the show. I mean, you are one person who needs to be there. Also, by the way, we are going to get some autographed copies of your book,
lovely.
which we are going to give up to people, which we are going to give to people as prizes. We are going to have like a contest. So people can ask questions, they can tweet us, they can put it on Facebook, and the best question will be chosen by Alok himself, which he likes, and he'll be answering it. But like I said, Alok, it has been fascinating I didn't realize that the conversation has gone up so long, but I have enjoyed every second of this. And I think before I end this, I have one last question. That what if Shri chose you to lead AOL after him? What will you do? What will be your principles of running Art of Living?
If I can just do what he did, I'm enough.
No, you have to go above that.
The Guru will instruct her. Like all good disciples, he will tell me what to do. I'm no one to think on my own.
Yeah, but all I can tell you is that you should be renamed as the PNL Baba.
I love that.
I think that's what Alok is. I think the summary of this conversation is we have a PNL Baba.
I love that, Vishal. That's the best gift you've given me today.
Thanks a lot again, Alok.
Thank you, boss. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, we have a brand new podcast series by Bloomberg Quint called BQ Conversations, which covers a range of topics like business strategies, latest trends in technology such as cybersecurity and artificial intelligence, and also personal finance. Episodes are out on the IVM Podcast app or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Advertising is dead. Yep, you heard me right. Advertising is dead. We're all in the content business now. Let's not call it news, TV, radio, etc., etc. It's all content, and we're in the middle of this weirdly exciting phase where all the borders and lines that have been drawn over decades has been swept away by this lovely thing called the internet. We're a show where we don't dwell on just the stuff that is now, but rather the wider stuff about advertising, media, content, and the whole goddamn circus surrounding it. Tune in every Tuesday for our weekly unboxing of the mystery box we used to call advertising. I'm Varun Dugirala, co-founder and content chief at The Glitch, and this is my new podcast, Advertising is Dead.